Have you ever laid awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why you're still wide awake? Maybe you thought, but I only had coffee this morning. Or you're someone who loves that afternoon pick-me-up but insists it doesn't affect my sleep. Many of us assume that caffeine is only a problem if we drink it right before bed, but the truth might be a lot sneakier than we realize. Because caffeine can stay in your system for hours, quietly changing the way you sleep, even if you don't notice it. Welcome to Research Reflections, where we explore science and health research in a gentle, relaxing way. Each episode, I share interesting research, explained simply, so you can stay informed and curious without feeling overwhelmed. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice, just science shared in a peaceful, calming space. Today's topic is all about caffeine and how it affects our sleep, even hours after we drink it. So if you'd like to learn something new, and perhaps feel a little calmer along the way, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today, I'd like to talk about a study that looked deeper into all of this, not just whether caffeine affects our sleep, but how much and when we drink it, because sometimes it's the timing that makes all the difference. Caffeine is one of the world's most widely consumed substances, used by nearly 80% of the population. Yet, around 40% of people still fail to get sufficient sleep, despite often relying on caffeine to feel awake during the day. It creates what some researchers call a vicious cycle. Poor sleep leads us to drink more caffeine, which can further disrupt our sleep, and the cycle continues. Many people know that drinking coffee late at night can keep them awake, but fewer people consider whether morning or afternoon caffeine might still impact their sleep many hours later. And I find that a bit alarming. Because how many of us think twice before grabbing that giant latte or that energy drink at lunch? This study, published in 2024, set out to examine exactly that, titled Dose and Timing Effects of Caffeine on Subsequent Sleep, a Randomized Clinical Crossover Trial. Researchers wanted to understand how both dose and timing of caffeine might affect sleep, not just in the evening, but even earlier in the day. They recruited 23 healthy men aged between 18 and 40 years old. These men were habitual caffeine users who consumed less than 300 milligrams per day, roughly the equivalent of 2 to 3 cups of coffee. Unfortunately, women were excluded from this particular study due to hormonal fluctuations across the menstrual cycle, as well as oral contraceptive use, both of which can make the body hold on to caffeine longer, amplifying its impact on sleep. As we age, both men and women become more susceptible to caffeine-induced sleep disruptions. In healthy adults, the average half-life of caffeine, the time it takes for half the caffeine to be cleared from the body, is about 5 hours. However, this can vary significantly based on genetics, age, sex, and other factors, ranging from 1.5 to 9.5 hours. So if you drink a coffee in the afternoon, a significant portion of that caffeine could still be in your system come bedtime, especially if you're on the slower end of that range. The study used a randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind crossover design, which means each participant tried several different caffeine conditions on separate occasions without knowing which one they were getting. They tested 7 different scenarios: placebo, 100 milligrams of caffeine taken either 12, 8, or 4 hours before bedtime, or 400 milligrams of caffeine taken either 12, 8, or 4 hours before bedtime. To give perspective, 100 milligrams of caffeine is about the amount in a small coffee, while 400 milligrams could be closer to 4 cups of coffee, or about 2 strong energy drinks. And if you have ever ordered a large coffee at a coffee shop, it's surprisingly easy to hit those higher numbers. It's a good reminder to always check the caffeine content before you buy drinks, especially when ordering larger sizes. Instead of coffee or energy drinks, the caffeine was given in capsules, so the researchers could precisely control the dose and remove other variables like taste or ritual. It's worth pointing out that caffeine pills deliver the entire dose all at once, while people often sip large drinks over a longer period of time. That difference in how quickly caffeine hits your system could change how it affects your sleep. The researchers measured sleep both objectively and subjectively. Objectively, they used a device worn on the forehead to track sleep stages, total sleep time, sleep efficiency, and how often participants woke up during the night. Subjectively, participants also filled out sleep diaries, rated their perceived sleep quality, and described how sleepy they felt before bed and in the morning. Here's what they found. 100 milligrams of caffeine, even when taken just 4 hours before bed, did not significantly disrupt sleep for those healthy young men. This suggests that moderate caffeine doses might be safe for many people as long as they're not consumed right before bed, which I find reassuring, but also makes me wonder how that might change as we get older, or if we're particularly sensitive to caffeine. The story was very different for the 400 milligram dose. When participants took 400 milligrams of caffeine 4 hours before bedtime, their sleep was dramatically affected. On average, total sleep time dropped by about 50 minutes. It took them about 14 minutes longer to fall asleep. They were awake about 26 extra minutes during the night. Sleep efficiency dropped by almost 10%. Deep sleep was reduced by about 30 minutes. And participants experienced more awakenings and more light sleep overall. Even when 400 milligrams was consumed 8 hours before bedtime, it still caused some measurable disruptions, although less severe. And remarkably, some changes were detected even 12 hours after consuming 400 milligrams of caffeine, particularly in reducing deep sleep. On reflection, that isn't surprising because after 12 hours, those people might still have roughly 100 milligrams of caffeine lingering in their system when they went to bed. That's like drinking a small coffee right before bed without even realizing it. This clearly shows that higher doses of caffeine can linger in the system far longer than many people realize, and even a morning or midday dose can influence sleep quality that night. And that's why I try to always remember, just because I'm not feeling jittery anymore, doesn't mean the caffeine still isn't affecting how my brain and body prepare for sleep. One fascinating aspect is that many participants couldn't accurately detect how caffeine affected their sleep. When caffeine was consumed 8 or 12 hours before bed, people often felt like they slept normally, despite objective measurements showing disruptions. This highlights how difficult it can be to self-monitor caffeine's effects on sleep. It makes me think, how often do we blame stress or a random bad night when maybe it was just that cappuccino we had earlier in the day? The researchers looked at genetics, specifically 2 genes, CYP1A2, which influences how quickly your body metabolizes caffeine, and ADORA2A, which affects how sensitive your brain is to caffeine. In this study, these genetic differences did not produce statistically significant results, but there were hints that slow metabolizers might experience shorter total sleep times. So what's the takeaway from all this? Moderate doses of caffeine, around 100 milligrams, seem safe up to about 4 hours of bedtime for most healthy young men. However, higher doses like 400 milligrams can disrupt sleep even if taken 8 or 12 hours earlier. As we age, we're more susceptible to caffeine-induced sleep disruptions. Women, especially those using oral contraceptives, may experience even longer-lasting effects due to slower caffeine clearance. And remember, just because you feel like you slept fine doesn't mean caffeine didn't quietly affect your sleep architecture. Based on this data, I'd personally try to have less than 50 milligrams of caffeine in my system when I go to bed. For me, that would mean if I have 100 milligrams of caffeine, I'd want that at least 5 hours before bedtime. And if I had consumed 200 milligrams, I'd try to have that 10 hours before bed, just to be safe, considering the average half-life. Of course, everyone's body is a little bit different, so it's important to know your own limits. For anyone struggling with sleep, it may be wise to limit high doses of caffeine well before bedtime, and perhaps even earlier in the day. As always, this isn't medical advice, just sharing research so you can make informed choices. Thank you for spending your time with me here today on Research Reflections. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or experiences related to what we discussed, so feel free to share them in the comments. If you noticed anything I might have gotten wrong, or if there's new research I should know about, please let me know. I'll make sure to pin any corrections or updates in the comments so everyone has the most accurate information. If there's a particular paper or topic you'd like me to explore in the future, I'd love your suggestions. If you'd like to keep exploring interesting research in a peaceful, relaxing way, consider subscribing and joining me for future episodes. Until next time, take care.